I think that was sort of the biggest thing is that realization is like, I am not the person I once was.
I got so many questions I want to ask you right now, but I'm going to wait till I'm just going to go ahead and click the board.
That's right.
So we
Click
can
it.
just say we're just on.
We're on. We're doing this.
So Graham Buck, thank you so much for returning to Growing Up Fundie. When honestly, if I were you, I don't know if I would have, because what a shit show my side of things were trying to get your last episode out. I appreciate your patience. And I'm so glad the world gets to hear the part 1 of your story. We're back for a part 2, but enough from me. How are you doing? What's new? What's going on?
I'm doing okay. And I do have to say, you're so apologetic about the amount of time it took, but quite honestly, I'm like, you had to listen to me for that much longer as you edited it multiple times. So, my apologies to you.
I do think that I listened to us talk for probably 10 hours, probably, if I had to guess. But I also had to listen to my own voice, which that's punishment enough. Trust me. So don't feel bad.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. That was one of those interesting experiences. And I'm not like any sort of stranger to listening to my own voice. I mean, as I mentioned on the last one, I have plenty of experience preaching, recording, going and listening back to it. But every time it's just like, that's not my voice. Like, do I really?
Yes.
I know everybody says it, and I can explain why, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's just like,
Yes.
no, I would not want to listen to me for the
Yes.
amount of time that other people have listened to me.
Listen, the sound of my own voice is literally why I have stopped introducing stand-up shows going, how's everybody doing tonight? Because it sounds so awful. When I have to listen to it back, I've just stopped saying that. I've just introduced things totally different because I can't believe I made people listen to that for like 10 years. So I feel that. I feel you.
Hey, if they kept coming back, then it means you were doing something right.
They chased me out, actually. That's why I left Chicago. They were like, "Get out of here. Your voice sounds like an 8-year-old."
All right.
So
Okay. So
yeah,
back
anyway,
to it.
back to Graham. So in the time between when we recorded your first episode and this episode, you have since told a lot more people that you are deconstructing. That you
Yeah.
I don't want to say you're atheist. I don't want to speak for you, but like that you are no longer religious in the way that you were when they knew you as a human being. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So that definitely has been, if there was one sort of major difference in life experience between the recording of the last episode and this one, was the letting the immediate family know. I had already told my partner Becky, but hadn't told the kids. We got 4 kids. Hadn't told parents. Hadn't told sibling. And I think a lot of it. Well, I mean, a lot of it is probably motivated by conflict avoidance.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, it's a scary experience. Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason why I have not had that conversation yet. Like there's no easy way to do it.
Yeah. So, but they all know now. And it really is one of those where you stress the experience ahead of time. And while the post explanation, well, not explanation, the post statement isn't all like wine and roses. At least like the Band-Aid was ripped, right?
Right.
I now no longer have to stress how someone is going to respond.
Right.
because they have,
You've
right?
seen the reality of it. Your brain can't make it more than it actually was in reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. And which came first? The episode coming out and you telling them? Or did you tell them like, did that have anything to do with why you chose then to tell them? Or was that just in line with how you were feeling at the time?
Yeah, so, the kids came first, and,
How old are they?
so our oldest is 14,
Okay,
uh, yeah, and then 11, 8, and 1.
got it. I wasn't sure if we were talking about like 6, 5, 4, or
Yeah. Yeah, and, the kids, they had varied, experiences of it. Uh, some just sort of like, "Oh, okay, well, that's a thing," right?
yeah.
Um, and others, um, at least in the moment, a little bit more tender about it than before. But I think a lot of that had to do with the one who took it the hardest. He's the most empathetic
Mm,
of our kids, right? And so
yeah.
like just that between the just kind of the heightened emotional experience of
Yeah.
finding out that something that's fundamentally changed about your family or parent. But but subsequent to that, at least as far as I've checked in, all the kids are like, oh, okay, it's a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what was the tough part for them? Was it that you were just different than who they thought? Or was it the like, the grief of you not necessarily believing in God or being religious anymore?
I think it had a bit to do with both.
Yeah.
One, just that like when you're a kid, at least as I should say, as a child, you have a particular understanding of who your parent is, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
then
Yeah.
when you find out something to the contrary, um, it takes a bit to process that,
Ye
and it'd be one thing to be like, oh, well, I used to be a registered this and now I'm a registered that. That's not, it's kind of like, oh, well, that's okay. But,
yeah.
when you get into those issues of like identity,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
like not only what does this mean about my parent, but what does this mean about our family?
Yeah.
What are the and I think a lot of these are more intuitive than rational. What does this mean about me? Like what
Yeah.
sort of
I mean, that makes perfect sense. Like, we are Christians, we believe in God, this is how it is, and then you find out maybe one of them doesn't, and then you're like, "Were they lying the whole time? Or did they actually believe it when they told me?" Or,
yeah.
and then obviously you would never like, you were never making fun of your kids, but I can see how a kid would be like, "Were they, like, making fun of me when I believed that stuff, when I said that stuff?"
Mhm.
So, that would be complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at least for them, a bunch of it was probably helped by the fact that it's not like our family and even though again my partner, she's still very spiritual,
Mhm.
um absolutely not uh fundamentalist, absolutely not
Yeah,
even evangelical,
right.
very more universalistic in her spiritual understanding, but so it's sort of this soft transition, right? Where like, instead of being like, we're at this super fundamentalist, church, and then now we don't believe anything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That we're already saying things that are like, well, these stories have meaning, but maybe aren't literal. There are multiple ways to interpret these things.
right.
So there wasn't as much as kind of a whiplash of
That's good.
belief per se,
Yeah,
um, but it's still a change, right?
absolutely.
And I think one of the things that when at least for myself, like when I'm working through thoughts and ideas and processing, like, it's taking a long period of time, right?
Right.
I just by my nature, I'm not really that, like, I'm not a snap decision maker. Um, and so if I'm saying something, or if I'm like making a decision about something, it's because I've been thinking about it for a while, whether, putting a lot of conscious thought into it, or subconscious even. Um, but when you then say that to someone else, they don't have that same time frame to process, right?
Right.
They sort of
Right.
get the info dump,
Yes.
and then I think it, at least, in this particular situation, like with the kids, it's now on me, it's now on Becky to kind of come alongside, and to to help them process that.
Right.
um not to put any sort of particular value, or like even perceived expectation of a certain kind of response,
Right.
because quite honestly, if they came back and said, I hear that you don't believe, but I still do, what am I going to do as a parent? I'm going to say, that's great, right? I want to support you in who you feel like you are. um and not like undercut that, even if I can see a lot of reasons why I wouldn't go back to that.
Yeah.
That um that that my job as a parent is not to dictate what my kids think, but
Right.
to guide them, right? And be like,
Yeah.
hey, have you thought
Yeah.
about this? Have you thought about that? I mean, we do it all the time, right? It feels more touchy um when you get into those issues of like identity, right?
Yeah.
These beliefs that say not just, I think this, but I am this, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um,
And was that the same response that you got from your own parents when you told them? Or was
so
it a little bit different? Did you
a
feel
little
guided?
a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. I mean, the last time we talked, it was, I think it was June.
Mm,
It's now November. Um, I want to say we ended up telling the kids maybe a few weeks later, right? So
mm.
it was pretty shortly thereafter. Um, but for the rest of my immediate family, um, it was a it was the end of September. So
Oh, so
about,
it's quite recently.
yeah, pretty recently. And I I think it was sort of a combination of spending a lot of time like, okay, this is a thing I just know myself, right? And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and I think I had mentioned the last time, but it's like, if my parents were older, it might be the sort of thing where, like, I could potentially wait it out, right? Not it's not some like kind of morbid sort of thing, but really it's just like, is this really something that is worth bringing up?
Right.
Um but considering that not only that they're not terribly old. I mean, they're only like a little older than, I mean, they were in their early 20s when I was born. So,
Right.
they've got a good long while left to be around, which I'm
And
thankful for.
you are not 50 yet, are you?
Oh
Or are
God,
you're in
do
your
I look? I
50s?
mean, it's the mustache.
No, because last time I thought we were the same age, and I remember you shook me to my core.
I am. I will be 43 next month.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say. I remember being shook, but I don't think I was that shook.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, and just like, so there's that, but then there's also just the fact that, like, I'm not good at, like, not accidentally blurting something out.
Yeah.
If somebody's got a secret, I will keep secrets, right? Because
Oh,
that's something that's been entrusted to me. But if
yes.
it's just like a thing that I'm thinking or like whatever, like it's gonna find its way out because
Yeah.
it's just like you want to say it. You want to say it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yes.
no,
Yes.
no, I
Yeah.
don't. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. Yes, you do.
Yeah. Other
Oh,
people's secrets stay locked down. My secrets, they just
yep.
come out. Yep.
Yep. And so, I think there was just a mix of I know I'm gonna have to do it at some point. Like it's just it's not a thing that I'm not going to do.
You
And
can tell
so
them or they can find out.
right, right. And
Yeah.
and and to put it in a compassionate way, like if I don't tell them but they find out, what that communicates is I don't value them and their
Yes.
relationship enough
Yes.
to be vulnerable, right?
Yes.
Now, that's not to say, I mean, somebody else could have like really shitty parents that are, it would not be safe for them
Right.
to do that,
Right.
right?
Right.
You gotta do what's right for you.
Yeah.
Um, but
Case by case basis, really. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But for myself, I just knew like this is not a thing. I can't just like uh, maybe for a couple of years I could show up at like a holiday whatever and just kind of bow my head and not say anything or like when they're talking about God
Yeah.
just like nodding or be like and even I mean even for a few years it was just like okay don't use pronouns see if they notice right or talk about kind of some comparative religion sort of stuff and see if they notice kind of thing just like not quite baiting, but, like, just
Kind of like testing, like baby
exactly, putting
stepping
your
kind
toes
of.
in the water, right?
Yeah.
Just being like, "What's that feel like?" Um, and so, there's just, like, all of this going through, and I don't know if other people feel the same way, but, like, I like to say, like, back in college, like, come exam time, you'd have your classes, you'd have, like, just that at least at UF, there was like, a block of time. There wasn't, like, assigned, exam time. You just had, like, exam week or whatever, and
Yeah.
when you were ready, you could go take it. And I would get to the point where, like, I would be study, 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 and, like, I'd still have a bunch of time and just be like, "You know what? I'm not getting anything more out of this. I've been staring at this sheet of paper for, like, 2 days now. I'm just gonna go take it." Could I potentially, get a couple extra questions right if I really like maybe, but the cost benefit is just like it's not worth the effort
Right.
or or just like the stress of like waiting, like "Ugh,
Right.
I know I have to take I know. Just rip it and go, right? Um and so I could feel that kind of like building and I'm like, "Oh no. Oh, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen soon." I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I'm trying to like tamp it down. Um, and then I was traveling for work at the end of September, and I had a flight out of Boston at like no, sorry, out of Portland, Maine at like 4 in the morning. And of course, before any big trip, I'm like procrastinating. So I maybe went to bed at 1 or 2, right? So I'm working like on 2 or 3 hours of sleep tops and and you kind of just do a real quick jump and then I've got a literally a nonstop across the continent and I'm just like sitting in the seat and I got my computer in front of me because I'm doing some work and I'm also reading and it's like oh shit oh no no oh um actually I'll tell you exactly what it was. It was finishing up this guy right here. Um,
Yes.
oh, yeah, for the
Yes.
audio, The Illusion of God's Presence. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I was 100% turned onto that author by this podcast.
I was gonna say
Um,
we love him. We
yeah,
love
yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
No, he's is fantastic. I want to say actually it was how I found you was I was looking at some other stuff and the episode you had with
With Dr.
uh,
Jack Wathy.
it was actually
Oh,
it was
it was
Anderson.
J. Anderson
Yeah.
Thompson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was that one, and I was like, "Oh, oh, oh, yeah, okay." So
Yeah.
I got that book, and I'm like, "Ah, it's tiny, and I can read this one fast. All right, great."
Yeah.
But
I
it
love them.
yeah, no, they're amazing. But it was at the end, and it was like just sort of relaying a story about, some, friend or family member who was kind of having some health stuff, and then I was just like, kind of, oh man, like it got me thinking about my parents and like, what if something happened? And I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. So I just start like stream of conscious, like writing this email. Like it's 6 a.m. and I've already been up for like 3-4 hours. Like this is not gonna, and I just shot it off. Well, that's not entirely true. I did send it to Becky first because I was like, I have not had enough sleep to know if this is okay. So I just want you to look at this, and if if you feel like the tenor is at least in the pointing in the right direction, like that's good
Yeah.
enough.
The
Uh,
chaotic in me is going, "Yeah, send it. Just send it. Just send it the way it is."
I know. Well, I did have somewhat of all right, I'm going to not edit this. I'm going to write, and unless like there was just something egregious, like, and by egregious, I'm sorry, but I really just mean like the bad grammar. Because like I'm like I can't, if I like write something like I'm like that is awful. I can't believe that came out of my mind.
That is
Um,
what they'll be ashamed of. Not the
it's
rest of it, just the grammar. They're
not
like,
the
"Son,
content, the presentation.
we would have accepted you for who you are, but this email, really? Did we teach you this way? Is this?"
Right? Like you're just obsessive use of the ellipses and parentheticals, and
It's disgusting.
but yeah, I was like the gist of it was mostly kind of in that same vein of what I was just saying. It's like there's something that's blocking our relationship, and I know y'all have felt it. Like I know, we've there's been a distance there, and it could be a whole host of other things, but at least one of them is this. And
Yeah.
I just go to proceed to kind of just lay out where I'm at, and mostly just to say, um you know like part of relationship is vulnerability and honesty, and so I want to relationship better with you, so here I am, right? And I'm sorry that I didn't, at least in some ways, believe in you or trust you enough to hold this well before, but I at least want to attempt that now. And so I've got, mom, dad, and then one younger sister. Um, my sister's response was just amazing. I mean, it was absolutely more than one could hope for, in the
Oh,
sense of just like, I mean, she's married to a pastor. Like they are in it, and like
yeah.
Southern Baptist pastor, like, um, I mean, yeah, definitely the cool kid side of the Southern Baptist Church. I mean, they're South Florida,
That is
so,
pretty cool, actually.
um, but I mean, very like thank you so much for, for just trusting and being vulnerable and caring, and obviously, like, we're not on the same page in that regard, but I love you and I'm here for you,
That's
right?
awesome.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, it was just so amazing. um and and my mom's response was, like, yeah, I love you, right? Give me a call when you got a chance. Great. All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Although that is also when my mom tells me to call her, it's also the most terrifying thing she could say, so I don't know, maybe that's just me.
No, I mean, there certainly could be part of that. I also know that she's way more. th- She spends most of her time sitting in front of a computer writing,
Yeah.
so doing it more. It feels impersonal to her. So
Right.
that
Right.
phone call. Um, uh, my dad's response was not, however. It was the thing I feared, but
Mm.
so in some respect I wasn't surprised by it, but in another respect it still was painful. Um, just kind of the I don't believe you. I've seen what you've done for God, and I've heard God speak through you, and you know, I know things have been hard, and you've got people who are telling you lies, and but you'll you'll come out the other side someday, and then you say you want to have like an honest and open relationship, but I don't know how to, you know, I don't know how to relate to you.
Wow.
Okay, right.
And part of you is like, I respect the mutual honesty, and maybe there is some vulnerability there on their side, but also, ouch.
Yeah, yeah. We've gone back and forth a couple of times since then, and it took me, God, almost a month to respond to him the first time. Well, I should say I responded back saying, wow, I need to think about. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this, and I
Yeah.
want to, respond, with both coherency and I need to process this, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so after I did, I was just like, I just tried to reiterate like what the thing I really want is just to be able to like be honest and be
Yeah.
who I am, right?
Yeah.
And one of the other things is, don't expect me to validate you. I'm like, I don't
Oh,
really. I wasn't asking for your validation because, you know, and
yeah.
two, if if I'm if I'm being quite honest, if I demanded your validation, I'd be asking you to violate your own conscience,
True.
and that's not fair to you.
No, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Like, so it's that sort of thing where like, at least for myself, if he or other people are responding like, I'm so sad to hear this, I'm going to be praying for you. Okay, that, while I don't think that's going to work, um what at least I hear you saying is, I care about you, and in the way I know how to respond to this, this is what I plan on doing.
Well, yeah, and, like, if when people always think, because I identify as atheist, they always think that that means I don't want prayers, I don't want
Mhm.
those things, like, that's offensive to me, and it's like, no, because I believe you, when you say you think prayer works and you truly think God is real and he's out here, I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome. The same way that being blessed by a shaman in another
Mhm.
country would mean a lot to me because I
Yeah.
know that they think they are doing something to help me, and I appreciate that. Like, there's never gonna be a time where I want less of your thoughts and prayers, you know?
Right. Yeah.
If you ask me a week later if they helped, I'm probably gonna be honest with you and be like, "No, still in the same situation."
Yeah.
But there's nothing offensive about somebody who truly believes that prayer is important saying they're gonna
Yeah.
pray for me.
Yep. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so yeah, that it's been kind of a wild ride in that regard that I I don't really know what I expected, and then at the same point everything that happened didn't surprise me. Um and now I'm just trying to figure out how to go forward with that.
Have you
Um
learned anything about yourself in the responses from people?
I think one of excuse me, one of the things that I have learned is that both by watching other people and doing some therapeutic work on my own, uh, I am far more like emotionally like, aware than I thought. No, that's not to say, please don't hear me saying that, that I'm, any sort of empath, because that's that certainly is, a part of my life that I'm actively working on in therapy. Um, but the ability to look at somebody who violently disagrees with you with compassion, and being able to see, like, all right, like, this is how they would respond, and they're doing the best they can with what they have, right? Like,
Right.
does it mean that this doesn't hurt? No, no, of course not. But I can understand it.
Yeah.
And 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 that was kind of a, I don't know if eye opener is it's not as dramatic as that per se, but like,
Awakening.
uh what was that?
Awakening.
Awakening. Um, I mean, I have had, the amazing privilege of, um, learning from some pretty incredible people how to, like, work on acceptance and understanding,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, from Becky, who's like the most empathic person I've ever met, who's also, uh, going to be working on her master's in clinical counseling. So, both innately talented and, and educationally, skilled. Um, so it's like having a ringer in the house. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that was sort of the biggest thing is that realization is like, I am not the person I once was, because, quite frankly, the person my dad is, I was, right? I mean, in all the good and
Yeah.
and the bad ways, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
um,
And if you don't mind, if I can make a comment, one of the reasons I had to edit your episode is because you would backtrack a lot on things you said, and you would, like, second guess your feelings.
yep.
You would say something with confidence, and then you'd go, "No, that's not what I mean. Is it? No, I don't think so. That sounds like a lot." And it's like, "No, that's what you mean. Like, say what you mean." Right? And now when I'm talking to you, so far you have said what you meant the whole time. The difference between who I edited and who you are now, like, I could probably just put this thing out tomorrow. It's very interesting to hear you go from where you almost can't even trust your own thoughts because you feel it was almost like you had guilt in
Mhm.
putting your thoughts first. You had guilt in saying, "I think I'm right about this." Your guilt was like, "No, you're not. If you say that, that makes you arrogant. Like, stop saying that. You don't know everything." And now you're saying, "I don't know everything, but I know how I feel and I know my experience and I'm going to honor that." And it's awesome to see the difference. It
Mm.
really is.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
That is very, very kind. Um, yeah, I think you're right there, um that part of the process, and at least for myself, and this has just been like, let's just be honest. First, let me be honest with myself.
Yeah,
And that is a that,
it's
that's a
hardcore.
hell of a job right there,
Yes,
because,
that's the hardest one, honestly.
it's it's so much easier to be both, uh like, understanding, compassionate, like, all these sorts of creating space for other people, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
but the moment, like, you turn your attention towards yourself, all of that compassion goes, at least for myself, goes right out the window,
yes. No, so
right?
so true, so
Y
true.
you know, and as I think about it, I think part of it has to do with the fact that like I'm not that other person, so I don't
Mhm.
know all the extenuating circumstances, right? I
Yes.
don't know what they had for breakfast today that might be upsetting them. I don't know if
Yes.
they, if they just got some really upsetting news elsewhere. All these
Yes.
sorts of things. I am intimately aware with everything that's going on with me, and sometimes I just feel like a jackass.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And so you should be able to do better.
Yeah.
Um,
Do better to you, to yourself.
that is the forward focused way. The guilt and the accusation is like, no, you should be a better person, right? Like uh, um you know
The same grace that we show other people is never allotted to us. Like, literally just 2 nights ago, I was on the phone talking to a friend, and I'm like, "Take a break, treat yourself, mental health. The world will be here when you're ready to come back," knowing full well that I was about to drive myself into the dirt working on the exact same stuff that I was telling this person they deserved to take a break on. And I even
yeah,
told them that. I was like, "Now, I will not take my advice, but I know it's good advice. So listen, like
that's right,
I know for a fact I will not do this, but you should do this."
but you should do this, and
Yeah.
I will know that I should do this as I'm
Yes.
not doing it.
I am
So
self-aware enough to know exactly how exactly what of my own advice I'm avoiding right now.
right, yeah, yeah, it's I I I I really do think that, um, quite honestly, I know we had talked some last about, what are sort of the roots of kind of the deconstruction process, where they started,
Mhm.
how they got going.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe I don't remember hearing it, and I certainly don't remember saying it months ago. Um, but whereas all of those things might be um, external factors, one of the biggest internal factors is like try to know who you are, Graham, and be honest about that. Be okay with it. Even if like you're not okay with a certain aspect, be okay with not being okay about it. But at
Yeah.
least be open and honest about it. Like
Yep.
like name it, put a picture on it, like, put it up on the wall and says, that's a part of me. I may not like that part of me,
Mhm.
but it's there, and
Yep.
ignoring it is at the very best uh going to, just sort of like slow you down in your self growth. At the very
Yep.
worst, it's going to sabotage you,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yep.
And I find that to be true about myself all the time. Anytime there's like any sort of heightened emotional state, especially um with what I'll say, like, unpleasant emotions. We won't say negative emotions. We'll just call them unpleasant. Um, I like literally my brain shuts down. Um, and it was even just a couple of days ago in therapy. I was doing some work, and there's this therapeutic modality called internal family systems, and part of what they do is like recognizing like different aspects of yourself as like parts, and so like, kind of doing some guided meditation sort of stuff. And I've got like, I'm like sitting down at a table with, like both this like protector and this, the like my intuition and vulnerability on one side, and sort of this rationality that kind of covers everything and keeps me safe. And then quite honestly, I don't remember the question that my therapist asked me. It just shut down. The entire thing just disappeared. It was like if you were watching a movie, and uh we just finished working through Harry Potter again, because it was Halloween, and we always do that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
like, he's got his face in the pensieve, and then like everything like disappears into smoke, and he like comes up out of it, right? It was absolutely like that. um
Wow.
and we're both just like, what was that?
Wow.
No. I don't know yet. There's some sort of something in there that says, you're getting too close to something, but I now know it's there. So
Yeah.
so it's now up on the wall,
Yeah.
and okay, so I can name that. That's a thing. I
Yeah,
have no
and I
idea how to.
think, like, what a lot of what you're describing sounds like just fear of the unknown. Not knowing how your wife will respond, not knowing how your kids will respond, not knowing how your parents will respond, not knowing what you think or what you feel or what that means, and it's almost like the journey that your brain takes you on when it's inventing the answer to those questions can be worse for you than just ripping off that Band-Aid than just being like, "Now I know what it is." Like you said, "Now I know that's there. Now I know how he feels. Now I know how she feels."
Yeah,
And even though sometimes the outcome is not great, like your dad's response, it hurts, at least your brain can't make you think it's actually gonna hurt way worse than that. Just wait.
right,
Like, just
right.
wait for it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I think we're really good. Our brains are really good at 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 um what's the word that I'm looking for? At hypothesizing what could possibly happen,
And
right?
making it so bad.
Oh my goodness. Like there are so many ways that this could go bad. It's the reason why, like, if I'm gonna watch a scary movie, the ones I want to watch are not like the gory slasher ones. Those are
Right.
just I
Psychological is the way to go.
but the ones that just like really mess with your head, and you're just like, what? What's going on, right?
Yeah.
And those are the ones that because where there are gaps, like my brain's just going like, oh, it's this tragic thing, it's that terrible thing, it's this,
Yeah.
and so it's absolutely true about just like daily life, right? Like, um, there are an innumerable number of ways that this could go badly, but
Yes.
now there's only one way that it did go badly
Yes. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
one particular case, right?
100%. 100%. It's like if you look up your life on WebMD, it's always gonna be cancer. Always. You're always dying. Like, no matter what, it's always gonna be the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
At least ripping off that Band-Aid in real life and confronting it in real life, you either, "Okay, I have cancer, now what am I doing?" Or you're like, "Oh, it's just this thing, I just need to take my vitamins or something." But, like,
yeah.
your brain will always be like, "For you, the worst." But then at the same time, when your friends or your family talk to you about a scenario, you give them all the grace in the world. "That
Mhm,
person's not mad. Don't be upset. Your boss isn't that mad. You're not gonna get fired tomorrow." When your
mhm.
brain would be like, "You're done. You might as well just jump out the window now, man. Just do yourself a favor," you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I yeah, that is absolutely true. So, yeah, I think you're right in the sense that there's now more space to, like, deal with what is.
Like, the reaction to what exists versus the hypothetical potential reaction that may or may not happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that, okay, the cards are on the table. Now, what game are we gonna play? Um, so that's been a big thing that's gone
That's
on.
huge. That's
Um,
huge.
yeah.
Has it impacted your friendships, like, outside of family? Have you? Because even though I know you may not have told a lot of people, it's kinda like what you described earlier. There's there's a palpable thing, you
Yeah.
know? You stop going to things or hanging out or talking about things nearly as much. People start to kinda pick up on that. Have you noticed any relationships impacted in that way?
I haven't really, and most of that is it has to do with the fact that, like, of the people in my circles that I actually consider friends, there are very few of them.
I no,
Uh,
that's adulthood 101, man. It's
I,
where did they go? What
yeah,
happened?
right. I I absolutely stole this joke, but I don't remember who to give it credit to. Is it, what was Jesus's real miracle? It was having 12 friends in his 30s.
Yes. 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 So good. So good.
Um, you know,
And one of them sold him out. Very realistic.
well, you know, and that see that I'm now justified in my
Yep.
experience. No, you know, honestly, the smaller relational circles has, I think, more to do with personality than anything. But then the people who are in are really in. So like, you know, I've probably got a couple of guys that I'm, you know, the most close with, and they've known for a long time because they're safe, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and so they've kind of been not only, you know, kind of along for the journey, but part of it as well. I know I mentioned at least one of them in the last interview who, you know, was also a pastor for a while and theologically trained, and you know, we went to the same church, and you know, and had just spent a lot of time like just talking about ideas and theology and that sort of thing, and both kind of moving in a trajectory. Um, uh, and so as far as like friends go, I haven't really noticed too much of a difference. There. Oh, that actually reminds me. Oh my goodness, there's another book I have right here that I will. I didn't ask him, but you know, he's gonna get free advertisement here. A friend of mine from college and then seminary, we actually lived together for a while. Just co-authored a book out by Zondervan. Well, yeah, called. Oh, here we go. The Great Dechurching.
Interesting. I'm gonna
Yeah.
write that down.
So Mike Graham. Um, so he's an executive pastor at at the church that we were attending in Orlando when we were down there. Um,
Wow.
you know, and so it's asking the questions, you know, who's leaving, why are they going, and what will it take to bring them back? You know, it's very much a um, it, it, it's not necessarily one of these like you know, the world is terrible, and you know, and we gotta save the world. A lot of it actually, they commissioned some actual research and surveys and stuff like that just to get like actual hard data, and it, you know, and it's their kind of interpretation of it. um but it's you know, he knows. uh,
Yeah.
you know, and we, you know, we went to seminary together, we worked at the same church for a while together, and so
It's
um
interesting that he went on to lead that church and you went on to leave that
yeah,
church.
you know, that is a very interesting thing. um but you know, it's I I think it absolutely is the case that like when, like again, it seems like the refrain of this conversation is honesty, right? When you are honest with yourself and when you're honest with others, it opens up the, you know, lines of relationship, right? And so like, you know, I love him, and he absolutely like, you know, the same to me, and so, and that's never going to change, and so
Yeah.
that's like super, that's super awesome. It is interesting, however, that technically by their metric, I'm not dechurched.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
What's their metric? Am I
So
dechurched?
uh, so hold on, I should have underlined it, but I think I can find it um, pretty quickly. All right, here we go. For the purposes of our study, we defined a dechurched person as someone who used to go to church at least once per month, but now goes less than once a year.
Oh yeah, I'm yeah, for sure.
And I had to think about this. Interesting, because I'm like, you know, at least for the amount of time that I would self-consciously identify as someone who's not a Christian, uh, I've been way more than once a year. Um, so that, what does that mean?
You're like,
Like,
am I not a heathen?
I'm like, I'm not de-churched, even if I'm de-faithed?
You're deconstructed?
Yeah, I mean, deconverted is certainly, I think,
You're
yeah,
evangelical?
de-evangelical. Yeah, that whole ex-evangelical. Um, you know, I think some people use the term deconstruction and deconversion synonymously. I think they're, me being a bit of a pedant would say that one can deconstruct and not deconvert.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
was literally just having that conversation maybe an hour before I hopped on here. You can deconstruct from one type of Christianity to another type of Christianity.
right.
And you can, and in my opinion, you can also deconvert from one type of Christianity to another based on like how extreme or different the beliefs are.
Hmm.
And a lot of people think that if you say you're deconstructing, that means you're becoming an atheist. And it's like, no, that just means you're changing and you're not what you used to be.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like you had this belief system,
Yeah.
and now you're taking those bricks and pulling them down, and maybe you'll build something new out of them, and maybe you won't, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Um yeah, but it's so it did get me thinking, because I'm like, like, what does it exactly mean to be deconverted, right? Because because and I know you've said stuff similar, because it's like, okay, so I've come down pretty solidly on I don't believe any of this, but I certainly spend a lot of time thinking about it.
I spend
Spend
more
a lot
time
of time
thinking about
talking
it.
about it.
I spend more time talking about God now than I did the first 12 years of my life. Like, it is wild. I have never thought about God more. I've never known the Bible better than I do now. It's wild.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
healthy? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. TBD.
Hey, at the very least, it's providing you something to keep yourself busy with.
Made a lot of friends.
There we
Heck,
go.
I've talked to
Hey,
more people in the last 2 years than I
that's
have
fine.
ever in my life too, so
That's
there you
fine.
go.
I do have to say, because I was listening to an episode, just was it the not the one that just came out, but the one prior to, and at the very beginning, you were kind of talking about just interviewing just quote unquote normal people, and I think, I absolutely was like, yeah, 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 because like you can go on and you can listen to all the same talking heads, but you're kind of like, I've heard what you have to say,
Yeah.
right? And not that not that what you have to say isn't good or isn't
No.
valuable, but like the more you have a platform, the more polished you become,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
less, not necessarily, but potentially the less relatable you become.
Truly though, it's about accessibility.
Hmm.
And if you have 10, I was talking to Tim Mills, that's who I think you're talking about, is the man has some insane number of followers, right? He's got like 25,000 followers, something like that,
Hmm.
something crazy. And there is value there. There is absolutely value there. If I am somebody who has nobody to talk to about this, I go to a channel like Tim's and I listen to it and I hear him talk and I'm like, "Yes, finally
Hmm.
somebody who a lot of people agree with thinks the same way I do."
Yeah,
But at the same time, there's also value in, well, maybe my situation isn't as bad as his because I'm not married and I don't have kids and that was a different religion than I was. So, like, yeah, maybe mine's not as bad. But then you also hear from a mailman and a teacher and somebody who, works at a coffee shop and
hmm,
they're talking about their modern day deconstruction from a religion and you're like, "Oh, I can relate to that person."
yeah,
I see myself in that person. Where you go to the people with the giant platforms to figure out how to articulate it.
yeah,
You go to the people with the microscopic non-existent platforms to find your community,
yeah,
if that makes sense. And I say
yeah,
that knowing that I'm trying to build a community online of followers. You're
yeah.
right. Like I get that. I understand that people come for me. They're gonna be like, "You're a hypocrite." No, they're really nice
No.
people, actually. They're very kind. But yeah, and I feel like I've been on both sides.
Hmm.
And so it's like I really need to hear from the other people who are just in college or just living their normal lives, having families.
Yeah.
They don't have any desire for these giant platforms. You're not going to find their quotes on stickers anywhere. Um, yeah, and so there's value in both of those, but I feel like sometimes the value in the smaller platform is ignored or
Mhm.
looked over for the opportunities that are larger platforms.
Yeah. 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 I think you're right there. Um, and I was going someplace with that, but then
I'm sorry, did I
I got too no, I got too engaged with what you were saying and completely lost track of
I'm
it.
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was too excited to respond to that. So we were talking about how like voices, like the regular people and their
Yeah.
voices and the relatability of those people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because we were talking about that quote about, what does it mean to be de-church? What does it mean to be deconverted? And that these kind of labels are helpful in sort of creating categories, but but our like every single one of our life experiences are so unique that it sort of defies any categorization to begin with, right? It's how fine grained it's going to be, and so at least for myself, whether it's consuming content, in books or podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever, just to kind of like figure out like, "Oh, I've been feeling this thing and I don't really know. I don't have like language for it. I don't have categories for it."
Right.
Um, and so, all right, so now I'm starting to get that. And then, oh, I'm also not alone in that there's this, there are just so many others who are out there having similar enough experiences that I know I'm at least not crazy.
Right. Right.
Right?
Or if you are, there's more than one of you. So you're not
Right.
alone in the craziness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you think that when you were involved in church, when you were involved in leadership, sorry if my voice sounds weird. I almost choked on some tea a minute ago.
Right, you were
Do you
getting so much tea that
I was. There's so much tea, I was just choking. That was good. Um, do you think that if there had been more of what there is now in terms of YouTube channels and podcasts and conversations going on, do you think this deconstruction would have happened earlier for you? Or do you think you would have actually been afraid of it and avoided it and made it like a symbol of what to stay away from?
that's a good question. I think that I I probably wouldn't have, um I don't know as if I would have made the journey any sooner necessarily. And part of that being, um having enough like actual people in my life, and by enough I mean really it was one or two. It's not like there was like this whole
Sometimes that's all it
groundswell.
takes, though.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because it was never a question of content per se. Um, well, I shouldn't say that. That certainly was, but I was educated against it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that like one of the I think I may have mentioned it the last time, but one of the authors that I had started reading kind of at the beginning of some of this more, we'll say if it was a slippery slope, it's where the slope started getting steeper, right? That was a Catholic priest by the name of Richard Rohr. um, and he um, has a number of books, but he definitely finds himself in. He's a Franciscan priest, and very much in this mystical tradition stream, um, of Catholic Christianity. And I had heard about him and enough to know back when I was in seminary. So we're going to say like 15 years ago, give or take, that like I knew this guy and I heard some, I wasn't like, again, reading source material, right? I was reading, other people's opinions of this person. Um, you know, and so, had this like, oh, not that like other people were definitely, he's dangerous, he's this heretic and X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, part of me is just like, I don't know as if that's how the Catholic Church works, man. Like it's not like some, Baptist preacher who can just get up and be like, I'm a pastor. It's like, no, you got like,
Mm,
you got
there's like
structures that,
there's a process.
right.
There's like a whole thing.
And like if you ever notice, like if a priest um publishes a book, there's a Latin inscription on the front generally, or like on the inside, nihil obstat, or it's something like that. Anyway, it's sort of this, it's a statement that like this content has been reviewed and approved.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that they would everyone would agree with it,
Right.
but that at the very least it's been vetted and said, you're not outside the bounds,
Yeah.
right? This, there may be differing opinions on this particular interpretation, but it's not heretical.
It's like the little blue check mark on social media. It's like
There you go.
this has been
It's
verified.
verified. It's the verified mark of Catholic publishing. That's funny. I am not going to be able to get that out of my head now.
You're like, now that I've seen it, I cannot unsee it.
I'm like, did they pay $8 a month for it though?
Honestly, probably, to be honest.
But anyway, so like I knew of him, right? I hadn't, but enough to be like, I'm gonna, I don't believe that, so I'm just gonna like, let it be, right? And then this buddy of mine a few years ago was like, I was reading this book, called The Universal Christ. I think, I'd love to talk about it with you. Like, okay, sure. And then, I read through it once. It's not very long. It's 150, 200 pages. Read through it once and I was kind of like, oh, well, that was interesting. And, I'm not sure I really buy much at all of what he was saying. Right. But
Yeah.
we can at least kind of have a conversation about it. And
Yeah.
then as we're, as we're starting to just kind of talk about the ideas and I'm reading it closer, I'm like, oh wait, he's mystic, right? I have a category for this. Like, so whether you're talking about like medieval, Catholic mystics like St. John of the Cross or Teresa of Avila, or, all of these ones that have these like ecstatic religious experiences. That's what he's doing. I understand that. Okay, so now he's like not only just kind of like he's not out there. He's like, oh, he's very much in this stream. Now I can really start to understand more what he's saying. It's like, oh, I'm buying this, like, and that particular book very much is, I wouldn't say a treatise per se, but it's very much in the purporting, no, promoting, a more universal understanding of God and what it means to be in God and that sort of thing. And so I say all of that to say that it wasn't necessarily about not having access to the content,
Right.
but having those relational and other structures that make what's being presented plausible, right? And so it just happened to be for myself. It was at this moment, and I think, and quite honestly, I think COVID had a lot to do with it, if only for and not necessarily like changing a trajectory, but maybe accelerating it because we're sitting around and like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here?
All the time to just think and
Right.
ponder and think.
I know some people had more time to think than I did, as having three school-aged kids at the time, distance learning, and also working from home. It was certainly
RIP. I don't
it
know how
was
you
certainly
survived.
busy. That's right. But just the I don't know if like isolation is the right term, but I think that's
I
certainly
think so.
like it's easy to run away from thinking about things when you can, right?
Yes.
And then when you stop running, all of the stuff that you've been running away from catches up with you, right? And so
Yes.
it did that for me as far as like theology went. Um, I mean, I think a lot of people, myself included, it didn't break relationships, but it revealed the cracks that were already there and be like, okay, now that you see this, you got to do something about it, right? Um, and so I think I think I would, if I'm gonna like forward focus this, with it, encouraging, people like if it's the kind of thing where you find yourself in a place of just I don't know isness, consume the content to be sure, but make connections with people, even if you don't agree with them, and
Mhm.
probably especially if you don't agree with them, because then like if you come to the table with an open mind, you'd be really surprised the kind of places you find yourself going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I honestly think continuing to engage with people that you disagree with is also important.
yeah,
Now, engage in a certain way. Like, don't if you
right.
all you do is like fight and argue with people, that's different. But um yeah, I think like continuing to surround yourself and engage with people and put yourself in the path of people who disagree with you at best will help you solidify why it is you think what you think.
Hmm.
I think a lot of us went through that period where it's like, especially in the height of our evangelicalism, where it's like, well, what about this? What about that? La 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 la. I don't have to answer these questions. I just believe in God.
Hmm.
Whereas if we had actually engaged with, say, content that might have been maybe non-religious or atheistic or something like that, we would at least know more about what it is we would say to those questions or what answers we would have. Or in my case, you might not be able to answer those questions. And you might be
Hmm.
like, well, shit. I don't,
Whoops.
yeah, like, whoa, no, I
I
slipped.
I didn't mean for that to happen.
Yes, yes. Like in my
Mm.
case, where I was like, how dare you ask me these things? Like, how dare you? How you have the audacity, sir. And now I'm friends with R and Raw. Like what like how does that happen? I don't know how that happens. It's
Yeah,
weird.
yeah.
But yeah. And so do you think at any point in your journey or in journeys that you've seen people hang on to what they currently believe out of fear? Like maybe they stumble upon content like that and they don't know the answers and instead of being like I'm curious what that is, they say la la la, that's the devil, I'm gonna ignore it, but then they can't really ignore it. They can't really forget about what they heard or saw.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that's true. Um, one of the responses I think a lot of people have is, and this is probably where I found myself for a good portion of my life, though less aggressive with it than some people are, is going at it for like the apologetics, right?
Yes.
The I need
Yes.
to know what they believe so that I
Yes.
can answer them, so that I can refute them. It's an agenda based exploration.
Yes.
Um, and so the 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 ugly side of it is, I'm gonna I'm gonna learn what they have to say so that I can like just completely tear them apart and show them how stupid they are, right?
And
You know,
that
and
that was me. I was like, "I'm gonna watch this video and figure out how to argue," and then I couldn't, and then I was like, "Oh,
oh no,
shit.
oh
Oh
no,
god.
oh
What have I
no.
done? I just
Yeah.
need to turn this off for a second."
um, and it can be more um hard. No, that's not the right word. It can be more compassionate in the sense of like, hey, this person that I know believes this way, and I don't understand that at all. And, so I'm gonna investigate, not because I even have an open mind about it, but just because I want to like know this person like
Yes.
better.
Yes.
Um, Now I think coming at it that way is certainly better than the other, and potentially could kind of change somebody's trajectory. Um, but so that's one way that people can come at it, where it's like that agenda driven of I'm learning this information for a reason, right? I think others um, and can just be like, huh, I wonder. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna like people believe different things. That's interesting. What do they believe? I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's always wild to me when I meet somebody who's neutral. Like, I interviewed somebody the other day, he's like, "I didn't grow up religious, and I don't consider myself an atheist. I never think about God." And I was like, "What is that
how is that a
like?"
thing? Like,
Yeah,
I
like,
do
he
not
was
understand that.
right, and he just seemed so at peace. I was like, "So what about when you talk to Christians?" "It's fine." "So what about when you talk to atheists?" "They're fine too." It's like, are you am I ill or are you ill? Which one of us is the most ill? I'm confused. I'm
Right? I know.
I'm excited for you, but I also feel like you're not gonna appreciate it because 'cause you've never been traumatized.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like that. It's always the people who don't appreciate it that don't get traumatized
Right,
by the
right.
church.
It's just sorta like, water off a duck's back. You're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
thing."
he referred to reading the Bible as doing research, and I was like, "What's it like to read verses and not get really mad?" Like, what's that like? I'm just confused.
I can only imagine, like,
When that day
especially certain
comes.
parts of the Bible just being like, "This is batshit crazy."
Yes,
Like,
yes, yes, and he was, like, having so much fun. So he had written a play about the 3 wise men, and he was like, "Yeah, and in my research, I found out all this really cool stuff," and I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait a second." I was like, "Wait, wait, I gotta stop you right there." So at no point were you like, "These people lied to me," and he's like, "No, because I didn't go to church," and I was like, "Ah, I see.
ah.
Must be nice." This like you at no point did you I was like, "Did you see a bunch of gaps in the story that didn't make sense?" And he was like, "Yeah, it was very fascinating. It made me wanna look into it." And I was like, "I don't how are you so yeah, yeah, must be
Oh,
nice.
man.
Can't even imagine."
No, I can't.
Um, for you personally, what has been or has there been anything that you're like, we've talked about that now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it.
Mhm.
Has there been any aspect of faith or Christianity or church or anything like that where you're like, I will miss that. Like I can't unsee it. I'll never feel the same way about it again. And I'm grieving that.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think church definitely, uh, fills a gap, at least in American society, for, like, social connection, um, and just, like, doing something with somebody else on a regular basis. So I mean, for some people, it's sports, whether it's participating or watching. For others, it's
Right.
like volunteering, with groups.
Right.
Maybe serving on a town council kind of thing of just like, um, I think there very much is a, for myself, um, I'm missing that rhythm, right? That like, um, that this was a thing that we did together on a regular basis, and um,
Yes.
so just kind of like, by way of example, our family here, I mean, we love music, right? You know, we've got instruments just lying around all over the place.
That's cool.
Um, and there's really no place in at least American society where people just sing together, right? There's a lot of being sung at or being played
Right.
at, right? So,
Right.
you know, um, but but um but just like getting together, it's like I don't know why I can't, and maybe this, it just shows a little bit of my age, but every time I think about this, all I can see is like the opening credits to All in the Family, you know, and the Archie Bunker and family, you know, sitting around the piano singing off key and just terrible, but loving every moment of it, right? Um, that like, you know, just it's why karaoke is more fun when you do it as a group, right?
Yes.
As
Yes.
if
Yes.
it's just like one person getting up there, they're sort of like flexing their I want to be a performer. But when like you get like a group of friends up there, like they're just having a good time with each other. And at least for myself, I'm like having an excellent time watching them. You know, it's just like
Yes.
there's absolutely
Like
a
camaraderie.
right, right. And so like, I mean, you know, we're kind of talking like with some friends, just be like, how do we like get this back? And it was like, oh, maybe we'll just like have people over and we'll just sing songs. I don't know. Like, what are we
Yeah.
gonna sing? Hell if I know. Uh, you know, but like, you know, just print up some chord charts or whatever and see what happens. Just because like it's and quite honestly, it could just be again one of those like because that was part of my formative upbringing, it's something that I'm missing. You know, I'm not saying like any of this is like fundamental to human nature, except that I well, okay,
Fundamentalist
here's gonna be
of
one of those
human
times
nature.
when I second guess myself. I actually do think song is fundamental to human nature. Um,
No, I agree with that too. I feel like that could be a whole other conversation. Yeah.
no, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because like it's just yeah. Anyway, um, so to get back to the question, yeah, there are definitely parts um of being in church that I miss. Um, you know, it's a lot of the reason why, you know, like I said before, for a long time, I would say, you know, I was religious but not spiritual, right?
Right.
Because because that 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 rhythm, the kind of participation in ritual, it triggers something deeper in the human brain than just uh, um, this is a fun time. I mean, I was even texting a friend of mine. She um, it was really interesting. She used to be a pastor up here, um, in Maine before moving back to Texas, and she transitioned a few years ago. I think it was about 4 years ago, and unsurprisingly, has found herself in kind of a similar uh, walk out of the church, and was saying just the same exact thing today. It was like, um, so her wife is still would consider herself a Christian, um, but is very like anti-church right now because of
Right.
just
Right.
understandably life
Yes.
experience when,
Yes.
you find yourself, and
Yes.
forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, I'm asking her forgiveness, but I think I've heard her use the term accidental lesbian. Um, you know,
Yeah.
uh, um, that 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 she doesn't want to be a part of any kind of church right now. Um, but my friend, she's like, I really miss like the liturgy, and I'd love
Yes.
to find a church that you know I could participate in.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely.
and and
Absolutely.
it was a really interesting conversation to have, because it was just like, yeah, like there's I think that belonging bit is something um that
Yes.
that we as humans, it's deeply ingrained in us, right?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
as whether it's, our tribe, our family, our group, our whatever it is, like we want to be involved in a social structure of some kind.
Yeah.
And it's really easy if you don't have, um, if you kind of don't have built in like uh, uh, barriers to keep you from going outside that, to just sort of end up being like, oh, when was the last time I really connected with anybody?
Yeah. Yeah. I think what I miss the most about being a devout Christian is, man, the confidence that I had in how things were gonna go.
Yeah.
And it was like, you were confident, right? It was like, yes, like I'm going to heaven. I'm doing all of this for a reason. When we sing these songs together, we can feel his
Mhm.
presence and he's happy. And now we're happy because he's happy. And it was just this big, and like nobody at church ever ever tried to counteract your confidence. When
Mm-mm.
I said, "I'm going to heaven and I'm doing this for God," they'd be like, "That's right, honey. You're doing this for God and he is singing with his angels in the heaven." And you like baked a brownie, like you did
Mhm.
whatever. And but like you did it for God, or like all you had to do was remember John 3:16, and they were like, "Amen. That's proof of the Lord's work right there." And you
Mhm.
felt good. Man,
Yeah.
I remember just being so confident that I was gonna make it to heaven and I was a good Christian and God loved me so much and we had this personal relationship. And I remember like I was that girl who was like posting the daily Bible verse on Instagram and stuff like that. Like that was me. Um and now I feel very confident in how things are going to go, but it's just a much different experience.
Mhm.
I'm very confident in what I think happens, say, after we die and things like that, but, um, I do miss that, and I don't mean to be insulting when I say this at all,
Mhm.
but ignorance was truly bliss. Not having to know where anything comes from, why it's here, all I had to know was that the Bible told me what I needed to do. And like, why does it matter where everything comes from? I was a curious kid, so I wanted
Mhm.
to know like where did the world come from and stuff like that. But I didn't have to know. It wasn't my business if I didn't Google it. And now that I'm like, okay, I don't think there's a heaven. I don't think there's a hell. I feel like I have so much more responsibility to take care of things that are unknown, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
I got to treat my health a little bit differently. I got to treat everybody else a little bit differently. I have to I feel it's weird because I feel a little bit more compassionate. I
Oh, yeah.
truly do.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
do feel like I'm a better person, but it's a lot more work. Like I still feel like I'm learning every single day how to treat people and how to be respectful towards people. Whereas before, it was like, "Love thy neighbor." Okay, how do you do that? Invite him to church.
Mhm.
That
Yep.
like and then you felt extra good when you were nice to a gay person because it's like, love the sinner, hate the sin. And
Mhm.
the most offensive thing I think I've ever heard. But at the time, I was like, "Yeah, no, I love them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're a sinner, but I love them. I'm a sinner too, but, like, they're a little bit worse of a sinner, to be
Oh, yeah,
honest."
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and just like, man, I was just so confident as,
Mhm.
my little 12-year-old evangelical self. It was just those were good days. And
Yeah.
now I do feel like I'm kinder to people, and I feel like I'm more tolerant, and I feel like I'm much more willing to learn, and I don't block things out because they don't follow the Christian narrative. But there's also just a lot more responsibility in terms of, like, you only get one.
Mhm.
This is it. I'm already 32 years into it. This is it. And, there's no slowing it down, right?
Nope.
So that's what I miss the most, I think. Man, I remember feeling like I won the spelling bee every day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what you're kind of expressing there, one, for anybody who did grow up in the church is like, "Oh, yeah, 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 I totally remember and resonate with that." Um, it just it reminded me again, of something that, Richard Rohr had said. He's got this three-step paradigm, called order, disorder, reorder, right? And he's doing this kind of talking about, I mean, there's a lot of three patterns, but in talking about, like, before someone can, like, dissolve an ego, you have to have an ego, right? Like, you can um before you can synthesize all of this disparateness, you need to have a sense of distinction, right? That, okay, I'm a person, and what does it mean to be a person? And okay, so the people around me are doing this and providing that order that my growing mind is able to use. It's almost like if you're offloading a lot of the mental work that you physically can't do yet on onto the people around you. Not quite hive mind, but sort of the same idea, right?
Yeah,
That, like,
yeah.
that 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 they're doing a lot of the work for you, and that provides such a sense of security
Mhm,
and such a sense of, like, stability.
mhm,
And
mhm.
I know, these sorts of things don't have to be tied to religion. They can be tied to
Yeah,
really anything else. You could just have, I don't know, a loving family structure, with no belief in anything whatsoever. But these people
yeah.
are like, hey, this is what it means to be a person in the world when you're in this
Yes,
family, right?
yes. And, like, you can pray, you can meditate as a
Yeah.
non-religious person because, like,
Hmm.
prayer felt good. I
Yeah.
miss that too.
Yeah. There is a person I follow on Instagram. The account is No Nonsense Spirituality, and she's a former Mormon. Um,
Oh.
her kind of platform is about, um, it's a, um, what's the pithiest way to say it? A non supernatural spirituality, right? That, like,
Yeah.
that these sorts of things, this metaphysics is important to humanity.
Mhm.
And how can we ground that and support this, but in uh an irreligious kind of way,
Yeah,
right?
like existentialism and
Hmm.
spirituality, I don't think has to apply to any religion. I
No.
like to think I have a spirit. Like, I don't think I literally have a spirit, but I have very spiritual moments. And the
Hmm.
only way I can describe them is spiritual. Now, I'm sure a scientist could tell me it's the dopamine and the this and the that and the mix of, but like it's to me, it's very spiritual experience, and,
Yep.
like, I don't know about your experience, but having done shrooms, that was a very spiritual experience, even though I ironically came out of it an atheist, so, like, that's neither here nor there. Um,
Oh, man.
and I had a pastor once ask me, actually on this podcast, he was like, "Then what is it?" He's like, when I'm singing hymns in church and we're all singing together and you get this, like, feeling. You get this beautiful feeling, and you look around you and you just feel like you're part of something greater, and you can feel God and you can feel your spirit. If God's not real, what is that? He's like, because I don't want to live in a world where that's not God. And my question for him was, if you can feel that, whether there's a God or not, why does it matter where it came from?
It's
Whether
real.
it's right, right. Like whether it's chemicals in your brain, whether
Mhm.
it's dopamine, right? Whether it's something going on in your blood, the heebie-jeebies, the little pricklies you get, or God, don't you feel great knowing that regardless of whether God's real or not, you can have that moment and you can feel that feeling with people and you can connect with others on that level, even if God's not real? To
Mhm.
me, that's beautiful. That's not sad to me. That's awesome to me because there's nothing more depressing than deconstructing and then thinking, well, shit, I'm never going to have a good moment with people again because
Yeah.
God's not real, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. Because it's like I would oftentimes find myself saying this, and I know a lot of people do too, but it's like, I know it's just in my head. I know it's just in my head. And like, regardless of what, what one believes about any sort of supernaturalism, the only thing we experience is in our head, right?
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
reality for
like,
us.
okay, so I'm feeling the table right here in here, right? The processing of those, neural stimuli is in here,
Yeah,
right? It's the same reason like when it provides so much more, compassion to people who have, differing, mental health, or neurodivergentness, right? Because it's just why would they be reacting like that? It's like, because it's real.
because it's real.
Like
Yeah.
there's regardless of whether or not, their experience of the world concords with the majority of people, we can
Yeah.
say that their experience is maybe not grounded in reality,
Yeah. Yeah.
but to them it's real. and
Totally.
and and so to respond in a condescending sort of way, like, how could you believe that? And I
Mhm.
mean, we could do it. I mean, we certainly, or at least I certainly did it, as a Christian. How could you believe that? Or coming at it from the other way, like, oh, how could you guys believe that? Like, I mean, that's it's not, one, it's not kind, but two, it's just like it doesn't take into fact that, like, it is real.
It's real. Yeah.
That
Yep.
doesn't mean it's true, but it's real.
Right. Right. So I'm so glad you said that. I teach storytelling classes, and there's always one of the assignments I love to give people is think of a time in your life, any memory, any story from your life, and then contact somebody who was there. And
Mhm.
without telling them that it's for a performance of any kind, just ask them what they remember about that thing. Um, and one of the like disclaimers I tell them is you may not like what you hear. You may think, "Oh, this was the craziest night of our life." And your friend might say, "Yeah, and you were an ass to me. You were an asshole. That you made me feel like shit that day." And I tell them all the time, I'm like, "You can be wrong about facts, but you can't be wrong about feelings."
Yes.
They can say it happened in 1998 and they can be wrong about that. But if they say, "You made me sad that day," just because in your memory you don't remember saying anything that would have made them sad, that doesn't make them wrong. You can both be correct about how you felt about that night.
Mhm.
So when you go to talk to people about how they experienced a thing that you were also there for, they're not wrong about how they felt, how you made them feel, how they remember things. It's only the facts that they can
Yeah.
be incorrect about.
Yeah. 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 Um, and that's the thing, right? That spirituality, if we allow ourselves to unentangle it from supernaturalism, is another way, is just another word for saying, you know, the um, that oh my goodness, the word just went out of my head, and it was a beautiful one, and it's not ephemerality. It doesn't matter. That there's so much of our experience that is somewhat beyond our words to explain, right? There are explanations for them, and we could even know, like, okay, so when we're in a group of people, and we're singing together and we're getting those feelings, all right, well, we've got mirror neurons, right? And so so we feel what the other person is feeling, and if we're feeling the same thing, there's a positive feedback cycle that increases those feelings, and it's like this. It's, forgive me, it's orgasmic, right? It's that.
Orgasmic.
But it's the same kind of thing where it only increases and increases and increases and increases, because there's a there's a shared reality, right?
Yes. Mhm.
um and so I think one of the things that for those of us who find ourselves outside any sort of um, religious faith of any kind, is to not look askance at that um, metaphysical experience,
Yeah.
um, because it yeah, yeah, you want to bring it back to uh, you know psychedelics and stuff like that, right? Like, part of the reason um, why things are so trippy is because you sort of break down the the structures that we've built that explain the world, right? And it allows you to um, come at reality sideways,
Yes.
right?
From, like, just,
And
like, a different angle entirely.
right. And so, like, okay, maybe when I tried it, like, I knew the wall was there, but the moment I took my hand off it, it disappeared. Like, it didn't exist anymore.
Did that really happen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
whack. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, I've had one experience, and sadly, I was, like, way too analytical about it. Uh,
I am shocked by this, Graham.
I
You being analytical and ruining your own shroom trip?
oh my goodness. Okay, so
That just doesn't sound like you.
this is a worthwhile story to tell. So, I say I have 2 friends. Um, so the 3 of us were at this, cabin in the woods that Becky had rented for a Father's Day gift, right? So, right on a lake in the summer in Maine. It was just
That sounds heavenly,
it
to be
was
honest.
heaven. It was heaven. If there was such a thing as heaven, it
It
was
was
that.
right there on the lake in
It
Maine.
was right there. Um, and so I had acquired this material, uh, uh, by donation, not by sales.
He did not purchase, therefore it is not a crime.
That's right. I made a charitable donation to an organization. Anyway, uh, so the 2 of us decided we were gonna try these, and so I take kind of the maximum whatever, because I'm just like,
Oh,
I just
no.
know myself. I mean, it wasn't like a super dose. It was only like
Oh, okay. I was like, "Oh, no.
it
No,
was
no,
only
don't do
no,
that."
it was only a gram. It wasn't like
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Gee, but,
no,
sh
which is probably why it was only but I hadn't read prior to that it says, take on an empty stomach, because like I'm like sitting there and I'm like, it's like been an hour and a half and I've got nothing, like 2 hours, nothing. I'm like it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to bed, guys. I'm old, and I wake up in the middle of the night and I was on a different planet.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, I'm like in the room, and there was like 2 twin beds, and my friend's over there, and he's like a super light sleeper, I know. And so I'm just like trying to like be super quiet, but I'm like trying also not to laugh really loud, because I'm oh okay, all right. So like, and and just like, I mean, I don't have hands, but I can touch things. Oh, I mean, it was bonkers.
That's bonkers. That
But the
didn't even
whole
happen to me.
I know, but like the whole time I'm like, okay, all right, so this is what it feels like. All right, so I wonder what happens if I tried this. So it's like, closing my eyes and can I go inside somewhere? And then like, I'm like walking down through my chest and that's it's just like weird stuff.
That's
I was like,
wild.
I think part I don't know what I was expecting. But I certainly didn't run into like um yeah, it wasn't like some spirit quest. Um,
That's
you know,
so interesting.
I didn't find any any animal guides to
Did
to
you at
take
least,
me
like,
places.
find your organs when you were
No,
going
I
through your
just
chest? Oh, okay.
I just, watched the ceiling kind of float in and out, and again, it was really weird. Like I
Yeah.
know I'm like under the covers, but maybe I don't have a body. I don't know.
You're like, "If I look under there, I'm not gonna look because if I don't look, I don't know." I
Exactly.
will say, no matter what you do, if you decide to do it again in the future, maybe I warned you about this. I don't think I did last time. Don't watch Hunchback of Notre Dame, the animated movie.
Mm-mm, mm-mm,
That
mm-mm.
becomes a horror movie so fast. So fast. I was scared out of my mind, and I wasn't even done with the intro music yet.
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
so don't do that. And that is my favorite Disney movie, which is why I thought it would be a good idea.
That is
That's
really funny.
yeah.
No, no, the next time, it's actually, gonna be part of my therapeutic process.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
good.
my therapist does guided stuff, so I'm interested to see what happens. But yeah, I do have to say that the one thing that I did come out of it with was just you really do have that, like, what I think reality is and what it could be are I'm not saying there's no like congruence, but it certainly isn't identical, right?
No,
That just
yeah.
like that if my experience is so sensitive to just this tiny little bit of a plant,
Yep.
right? That like, what does it say about other things, right? Um,
Right?
you know,
Right?
I mean,
Have you
I
ever
mean,
read
hell, like,
Slaughterhouse-Five?
have I read it? I want to say I may have glanced at it in high
About
school.
about the optometrist who gets unstuck in time?
No, this is not the book I'm thinking of. Do tell.
Oh, so Kurt Vonnegut wrote a book,
Yeah,
Slaughterhouse-Five.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And in the book, there is an optometrist who, at random in his life, becomes unstuck in time. And basically what happens is he, like, wakes up in other times, and he has no control over it whatsoever. And
Oh
he can
man.
also travel universes. So, like, at one point, he's in an alien space, like, planet, I guess you could say. And he's not sure if it's so far in the future that aliens are now like regular life forms, or if he's like transcended time and space and now he's traveled once again, like unstuck.
Yeah.
And it's I think you would enjoy the story. But
Ooh.
the interesting part about it is um Kurt Vonnegut was present for the bombing of Dresden, and he had to do some of the cleanup work after
Uh-huh.
the bombing of Dresden, and it very much
Uh,
traumatized him. And he
yeah.
could not figure out how to write about it. He just had no idea because it was like such a traumatic event that he just couldn't figure out how to process the idea. So what he
Mhm.
did was he wrote this whole book about this optometrist who gets unstuck in time, and there's aliens and there's wild wilderness. It's like reading like an acid trip. And
Mhm.
then the very last part of the book, like if I remember correctly, because I also read it in high school, it maybe the last chapter is just like, and then here's what I saw after the bombing of Dresden. Like here's what I
Oh
experienced.
wow, like he just writes it right up.
Just just he just real quick, like, and here's what I need to get off my chest. The end. There it
Oh,
goes.
oh
Yeah.
man. That's incredible.
It's fantastic. When you're reading the book, you're like, "Where is this going? I don't understand." And then you're like, "Oh, oh my."
Yeah. I mean, that just, it's so powerful just to the example of like what people need art for. And I know
Yes.
this kind of is getting a little far afield, but there's a there's another podcast I listen to, the ologies, uh, 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 and for October she was doing, like kind of, you know horror theme, whatever. So anyway, there was this one on I think it was called teratology. It's just monsters, and the guy was just really interesting. He was a professor of history, and he gets to teach on monsters. uh
That's
mon-
awesome.
yeah, right. But kind of talking about things like when the Gohira comes out of uh Japan, processing the horrors of World War II, that a lot of the real, like, incredible violence and gore of some of these 70s and 80s like grindhouse films are produced by people who experienced Vietnam and Korea and that sort of stuff. And even like uh again to the experience, he was talking about this one um uh makeup and art designer who he was a war photographer. And so he's taking pictures and doing this sort of thing. And his way of like ultimately processing this was um as he's working on these movies, like, that's his source material. And so he's bringing in all of these horrors that he had seen, and if he can put it into film, it helps his process of like making sense out of
Yeah.
this.
It wasn't for nothing. It was
Right,
for art, kind of.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think of it like something that I hear from people all the time when they're talking about this podcast, other podcasts, is they say things like, "I don't know if my story is worth talking about," or like, "I don't know what I would say," or "I don't even know where to begin." And I always think of Slaughterhouse-Five. I pointed at it as if you can see my computer screen. Because it's like that's a prime example of a man whose job was to write stories. He was already famous for it.
Hmm.
People would have bought it no matter what he wrote. And even he was like, "I literally don't know how to put into words what I've been through."
Hmm.
And it's okay. That's okay. It's okay to figure out other ways to describe what you've been through. And when people hear me say things like that, they're like, "Well, I wasn't traumatized." Like, "I'm sure about that?" You know that, "You sure about that? You sure
Sure
about that?"
about that.
Yeah, and it's like there are other mediums and resources and ways that you can figure out what it is you wanna make out of it. I don't even wanna say how you wanna say it, because maybe you don't wanna say it, maybe you wanna do something else. And so even though we look at things like Bible meme accounts and like Instagram, like Science and Jesus memes, one of my favorite Instagram accounts.
I love that. Yes.
But the reason that's so popular is because people who can't confront what they've experienced and what they're thinking and what they're feeling, they can share a meme about it.
Yep.
They can share a meme about it, and other people can validate them by liking the meme and going, "Ugh,
Hmm.
relatable," you know?
Yeah.
And when we think, "Oh, that's just memes, like, they're being disrespectful," you know? No, they are literally that's how they're figuring it out. That's how they're sharing it.
They're
Yeah.
memes, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like that the moment I found out that it was Dawkins who did that, and I was like, "Wait, what? Hold on, huh?" But then, like, getting the idea of like, oh, it's gene transfer, but cultural, and yeah, so we're taking these little images, words, sounds, whatever it is, and like I can't put it into, but here's something that gets at the feeling,
Yes. Yes. Like,
right?
I'm not ready to talk about this. I'm not ready to tell anybody this is how I feel. But that meme with SpongeBob on it is it's articulating a thing that I'm ready to share. I
Mhm.
can put that on my story without revealing all the stuff that's still really touchy. And
Yep.
then anybody I know who clocks that and they also understand that meme and they
Yeah.
like it and they LOL, now suddenly we share
Mhm.
something that we didn't
Mhm.
realize we shared before except that meme, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's to me it's beautiful. I know that's like a super deep way to think about memes, but that's what I think about. I'm like, how when you can't say it, when you
Mm.
can't write it, how do you express it? And I
Yeah.
think memes are perfect for that.
I absolutely agree with you, and I don't think you are overthinking them in the slightest. Because it is 100% a way that we can communicate without, you know, saying it out loud. Because maybe we
Yes.
can't, because we don't have the words. Maybe we can't because we shouldn't have the words,
Right.
according to some people, right?
Right.
Um, and that by sharing it, it's like the best humor, right? That
Yes, it's
that
so good.
because it it's subtle, it's subversive, right? I know I know it's okay to cancel him, but back when I was in college, they during one homecoming they brought Bill Cosby to do a part of it. He did a set in the football stadium. So you got like 80,000 people,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
And this was well before anything, you know. So he was
Right.
still America's dad.
Yeah.
Um, but I had this moment of like, I can't believe this is actually happening as I was in the stadium. And he's got the entire place just rolling laughter. And I'm just like, do you guys realize that he's actually insulting you? Like, you know, it was kind of the bit of like, you know, this is called having a good time, you know, getting so shit faced that, you know, you put your face where faces shouldn't go, and just all, and everybody's just roaring because of course they're like, yeah, I've been there. Um, you know, but I think this is called having a great time. And he's like, dude, you are so dumb.
Yeah. You are the lowest common denominator.
But you know, I say all of that just to kind of make that point that art, whether it's, you know, comedy or memes or movies or poetry or songs or whatever, they fly under the radar. You know, all of the, you know, that all of the antennae that are, you know, kind of boundary keeping, be like, you know, we don't say those, we don't believe that people that do or bad, they're outside the bounds, they're heretics, that this, that, or the other. Um, and it allows for that conversation starter in a way that is um, safe, and in a way that maybe we couldn't otherwise.
Yes. Yep. And as an audience to that, like say you and I are connected on Instagram, I can just heart it
Hmm.
and say so much
Yep.
about what I think of the same thing that you were thinking just by boop, like,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
there's like an entire conversation happening there that
Yeah.
we're not ready to actually have, but we've had in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
said all that to say you need to follow Science and Jesus Memes on Instagram. It's one of my favorite accounts. Another great
I love
account
it.
is ironically Growing Up Fundie with a Y. We met. She's been on my podcast.
Yep.
Had no
Yep.
idea we had the same title. She's fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, her grandma was my piano teacher
I
back in
I
Arkansas.
remember that episode. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
wild. We live in the same neighborhood, but great meme account. Um, well, Graham, I want to be respectful of your time because I realize I've been talking to you for over 2 hours now. But I feel I feel like there I'm trying to think how to describe it. I feel such great feelings. I wish I could come up with a better word. Excited, encouraged, I think is the word I'm looking for. I feel very encouraged talking to you again and seeing just what a difference June to now has made. in your delivery, in your thought process, in your communication style. And it sounds like also in your personal life as well. It sounds like you've been super honest with people recently, and you can tell like it has reverse aged you in a way. And I know that like I could keep going for like another hour with more questions. I'm probably just going to invite you back for a part 3 so I can like just keep sipping the tea. But if you had something to tell anybody who's in a position like yours where their family is religious, maybe they have kids, maybe they have a spouse who they met through their religion, and they're like, I can't keep living this lie, but I also don't want to ruin my life.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to blow up my spot. What would you say to somebody like that?
Um, so what would I say? The uh the snarky answer is don't do it.
See, my answer would be do it. See
Keep
what
lying to
happens.
yourself, or keep lying to other people. But that's not true. It's gonna hurt. It will. And you know, like in the previous episode, I was kind of like pre-stressing that. In this one, there is a greater sense of like groundedness,
Mm,
but I would also be lying if I said that it's been easy, it's been enjoyable. I mean, I've been severely depressed
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
for a long time, and I mean, and not just, and I don't even say that just as kind of like oh, I've been really sad. Just like the classic signs of lack of self-care, lack of like joy and the things that used to bring you enjoy, like all those sorts of things, and a lot of it stemming um from this transition, because it's been incredibly difficult um for my marriage. It's been incredibly difficult for my relationship with my parents. Um, Less so with the kids, but I think that's in part because in some respect, I mean, as a parent, you're you kind of hold the power there.
Right.
So it's difficult in the holding myself back and allowing them to not feel pressured to
Right.
respond in a particular way.
Right.
So it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be hard. Um, and um, I mean, it may end things. Who's to say, right? It could, like, let's say it just really torpedoes your relationship with your parents, right? Like that's that sucks. And I would hate to just kind of equivocate and say, like you got to make that calculus. But the thing I would encourage anyone is that like you've said a number of times, and this, all I've got is now, right? Um, and is it worth it? And
Right.
and maybe, I mean, maybe for somebody it isn't, and that's okay. Like
Yeah.
I think one of the things, and certainly not this channel, but one of the things that could be ascertained from other voices is like, you know, if you like continue like, you're just kowtowing to to the man or whatever, and you're
No,
not, you're
not
not
at all.
speaking truth to power and all this, and
No.
you're, that it does obviously come with its own set of complications.
Sure.
But like, if it's the sort of thing where like, I mean, it's really going to, um the cost at that moment is going to outweigh the benefit, then that's okay,
That's
right?
perfectly fine. Right.
um it may be better at a different time, right? But the thing I think that if you find yourself kind of in the I know I have to, but I just don't know how, um, is, at least for myself, like, coming up with a plan and, like, I'm gonna do it then, and I'm gonna do like, it that wasn't gonna work for me,
Right.
right? Because in some respect, um, it's not like you're forcing it,
Right.
but it's not natural. It's like if you were to memorize lines to, in a play or something like that, and deliver them woodenly, right? That that's not a skillful way of doing it. But
There's
if you
no growth there whatsoever.
right, but like, if you just kind of soak in it, it'll come out at the time when it's right, and you may be like, not realize that it was the right time until after you said it, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like,
Right.
"Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh," and then, "Oh, wait, no, that absolutely," like,
Yeah.
my intuition knew
Right.
that if there was gonna be a time to do it, it was then.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I felt like 6 a.m. on a continental flight, was the right time to do it.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, but that's that's how it was. But, so if and how these are all somewhat, um, external to the real crux of it, I think, which is being honest with yourself. You
Yep.
know, if the honesty is like, um, I'm having thoughts, I'm having doubts, and a voice in your head is saying that, um, you shouldn't be. That, doing the work to be like, I hear you, and I don't believe you,
Mm.
right? Because truth be told, if a belief system can't withstand questions, then maybe it's not as strong as you think it is, right?
Yes.
I
Yes.
feel like I might have said this last time, but I'm gonna say it again because it deserves repeating. I was always warned about the slippery slope, right?
Yes.
That, like,
Yes.
if
Same.
you go down this road, it's a slippery slope and you're gonna
Same.
slide right out.
And that's the
And,
devil.
you know, if and I was always like, it's not a slippery slope. It's do you have such little faith in me that I can't, like, go, research this or look at that and not come back, right? Um, but, looking at it now on the at the bottom of the hill, as it were,
Oh,
um,
shit.
shit, it was
Wow.
a slippery slope.
Wow.
Um, because the moment at least for myself, the moment I started asking questions and coming at it, with, rationality, um, it did start to fall apart for me. Now,
Mhm.
I also think that it has to be said, I could be very wrong about this. There could be a God. Uh, you know, who's to say? Um, I don't personally see the evidence for it.
Right.
Um, but I say that to say that be not following your questions because you're feeling afraid of the results. It is both valid fear and also, I think, or at least I hope that you're hearing from, me, Sydney, or anybody else, that, like, you're not alone, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
um and however uh, unique you may feel that your particular experience is, it's not so unique that there's nobody who could empathize or understand
Yes.
with it.
Yes.
And so, um, again, getting back to that group understanding of that, that when we find uh, groups of people for support, um, we have the strength to do things maybe we didn't think that we could before.
Yes.
Um,
And you're never gonna unthink that question.
right.
You're
Once you
n
see it, you
you're never
can't
gonna unthink
unsee
it.
it. Yeah.
That was me. I thought of them, and then I was like, "I'm gonna put these away." Surprise, they didn't go away.
Yeah.
They just nag at the back of your head.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe there are people that can put thoughts out of their head, but that's certainly not my experience.
Certainly not me.
You
Maybe
know,
it's the ADHD, but I certainly cannot that is the one thing I can't unload is questions.
no,
And
yeah,
yeah, once I see things, it's like,
I have to know. I have to
it's
know.
gonna keep me up.
You're like,
It's
oh,
literally gonna keep me up.
yeah, yeah. But I think that would be the encouragement. It's like honesty with yourself. And if you're honest with yourself and you find yourself, going back into, whatever religion you may be in, then you're being honest to yourself. And that's okay. You're not,
Yes.
there's, I mean, I guess potentially there's some people would, say that you've made a bad choice, but uh,
There will always be somebody who tells you you make a bad choice.
that's
Trust me.
you're so very true about it.
Trust
But
me about that.
it's like we've got three rules, three fundamental rules in our house here. It's don't hurt yourself, don't hurt others, and don't die. Right. Um, and and this covers a lot of a lot of ground
I
in
was gonna
three
say,
rules. But don't hurt yourself. And that's not just like physically, like be kind to yourself. Don't
yeah.
don't tear yourself down. You are a good person, right?
Yes.
There are sure, there are some people who are sociopaths,
True.
but there's such a fractional part of the human species as to
Well,
I feel safe to say you're not a sociopath,
also,
and
a therapist literally said to me, "If you are concerned that you might be a sociopath,
then you're
that's
no,
evidence that you're not a sociopath.
that's right.
So
That's
if
right.
you're worried about it, you pass the test."
Yeah. So don't hurt yourself. Don't don't be so hard on yourself to give yourself grace. Like we were saying earlier, we're the hardest people to give ourselves grace to,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. You are
Uh,
listening to two people who will immediately leave tonight and not give ourselves grace. We will not follow this advice. We will not do
Absolutely
it,
not.
which
I,
is why
I
you should do it for us.
I guarantee there. We're gonna end the conversation, and I'm gonna go into the oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, did I accurately represent this person? Did I say something that might have harmed them because like I just wasn't it's 100% going to happen.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
Um, okay, but be kind to yourself. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt others, right? Like, you know, I think if there is one thing, and you find yourself going back into a religion, at least question the parts that seem to hurt people,
Yeah. Yep. Question the parts that make you feel bad about yourself.
right? That like, you know, that if it harms somebody else just for who they are as a human being, maybe look at those questions a little bit deeper,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Um,
Or if you feel like you have to lie because that something applies to you that you know will be frowned upon or shamed, maybe there's something there.
yeah, right.
And that something is not that you are a sinner. That is not the something I'm talking about. But
Oh, that's right. That's right.
yeah.
It's just whatever decision one makes, it will be hard. Um, but man, I feel like I'm just quoting lots of things tonight. But I tell you what, Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own, it's the heart that makes it great. Like, you can't buy quotes that as good as that. Like, that is
That's
just
what she said?
oh my god.
I think I haven't said that since high school. Wow. But I just couldn't I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. It was like that scene in Alien where it just like busted out of his chest. I had just had to say it. I'm sorry. I'm
That's
sorry.
amazing.
Continue.
Um, but but it is that thought that like, um, if the thing that's holding you back is just that it's going to be hard, that's not going to hold you back forever.
Yep.
Or you are just going to make yourself miserable your entire life.
Or it's going to get hard to fake it. It's going to get
Yeah,
just as hard to pretend like that's not it.
yeah,
Like that's not you
yeah.
at some point, even if it's not today.
Hmm.
100%.
Yeah, to put it out on others focused, you have to ask yourself like, what am I saying to the people I ostensibly care about that I'm withholding this part of myself from them?
Right.
That they're not safe, that they won't, love me, that I don't trust them.
They won't
Um,
understand.
yeah,
They're
and
not smart enough.
maybe they won't, and maybe their initial responses would be painful, and quite frankly, maybe they could be harmful. Um, but you've at least given them the agency
Mm,
to respond
yes.
instead of taking the agency from them. Um, which is one of the things I apologized in my email to my family. It was like, I've taken away your chance to respond to this.
And then your sister responded in a way that you didn't expect,
I I
that you were
didn't.
pleasantly surprised by.
It was incredibly, um, incredibly kind and uplifting. And
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked more over the last few weeks than we have in years. Not
Yeah.
that like we never talk to each other, but it's just like there's been kind of a reconnection there that uh, I mean, if that's one of the only uh, positive outcomes, it certainly would have been worth it, right?
Yes.
Um,
100%.
so it other people love you
Mhm.
even if they don't understand you.
Mhm.
And if they, I mean, if they say like, I don't know if I can, be connected to you because of this, um, then I mean, there's pain in that to be sure, because every change is a death of a sort. Um, but the other way to look at it is it allows the space potentially for more freedom and honesty for the two of you.
Yep.
Um,
And you might meet even more people who love you once you decide to explore that side of yourself. I have 10 times more friends now than I ever had in church or in religion of any kind.
mhm,
And I don't think it's because atheism versus Christian. I think it's because of I finally got to be myself, and
mhm,
I finally felt comfortable in my own skin, and I finally let people see who I was, and they liked that person.
mhm.
No matter what the other group had been, if it was a group I didn't belong in that I was forcing myself to stay in, the same outcome would have happened. I'm not saying that like Christianity kills your vibe,
No.
but I do think that coming out of it helped me become who I am as a person, and that's when I found people I connected with so much faster than when I thought Bible verses and Awanas and Veggie Tales were the way to make friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's you're right there. When you feel free to be yourself,
Mhm.
you create the space for other people around you to be themselves.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and and that is just, I mean, that's the whole of it.
Yeah. And it feels great.
It does.
It feels great.
It
It really
does.
does. It really does. It feels awesome. It's the same feeling I get when I'm teaching a stand-up class and somebody who's super old joins my class and they're like, "I've never been around people who told me I was funny, and like that's why I didn't try stand-up earlier. And now I'm retired and I would like to try stand-up." And they're funny. And you get to be the first person to be like, "You are hilarious." And just watching somebody like blossom. First they're like, "No,
Mhm.
I'm not." And you're like, "No, really, you are. You're so funny." Gosh, I love that. And I get the same feeling on this podcast when I'm talking to somebody and like they're sharing their story for the first time. And it's like, yes, look at
Yeah,
you. That's
you're
awesome.
doing the damn thing.
Yeah. Like that's half the battle, dude. You said it out loud.
Mhm.
Congratulations. That's awesome. But well, Graham, this has been a really fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I have more questions. I'm probably going to bring you back for a part 3 if that's cool. Um
100%.
but for anybody listening, I'm going to link Graham's contact details in the notes of this
Mhm.
episode, just like I did in the last one. Please reach out if you have comments, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have anything at all that you would like to talk to Graham about or you would like to ask me about. I'll also post my contact details in the notes as well. Um, you're not by yourself. And if you heard something in today's episode that you relate to, we'd love to hear it. Let us
Yep.
know because we're real human beings. We're real human beings sitting here talking to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Graham, thank you so much again for your time and your story and the just letting me see like the night and day difference between part 1 and part 2 is just awesome.
Oh, man.
Just
Well,
awesome. Congratulations.
thank you so much. I absolutely appreciate the opportunity. It is an honor and a pleasure.